Okay, it's Monday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. um, and it's been almost a week since I've been back from IMSL in San Jose. And it's 12 o'clock and I still need coffee. But while I was in San Jose, I decided to go to my old hometown, Mountain View, California, which was just about 12 miles away. I originally planned to bicycle there, take my bike and take a bike ride over there because it's only 12 miles. But obviously that didn't happen since my bike got stolen and still sits in evidence. But anyway, my objective for going back was just to bring closure to everything that had happened when I lived there. I lived at 234 Palo Alto Avenue. It's funny how you remember vividly some numbers, addresses, because of significant things that may have happened to you. So I went back and it was raining. Kind of reminded me of Oregon. It was just pouring down rain. I just took my time and walked around the neighborhood. And it was good. It was good for me to do that. And maybe it didn't happen last year because the timing wasn't right. Because I believe everything happens in the time it's supposed to. So I did that and I videotaped it. So let's take a look at the video, and then afterwards I think you'll understand more about why I am the person I am. Yeah, so let's go. This is the alleyway along some apartments. And I always used to take a shortcut here. We were all about the shortcuts when we were kids. Get through this brush here. But this alleyway had some really grave significance to me. And there used to be a gate at the end of this alleyway that closed it off. Now it's all open right now. But this right here is the place that when I was 8 years old, I was coming home from my friend's house and I got followed by my neighbor across the street. His name was Roger. I didn't think anything of it because he was a friend. But what happened next was something that I would never hope on my worst enemy. This right here is where I was raped when I was 8 years old. And I could see somebody through these cracks as it was going on. And I yelled for help, and they wouldn't help me. They actually just stood there and watched through these cracks as Roger raped me. I could do nothing about it. I finally gave in and just lost myself in my head until it was over. That started an ongoing 2 years of sexual abuse and rape every week by Roger, his best friend, who happened to be my babysitter's oldest brother. I always used to take shortcuts when I was a kid. This alleyway was our infamous shortcut. Before we lived in the house on 234 Palo Alto Avenue, we lived in these apartments. But there was another alleyway here that came along the house that we used to live in. And I remember the last time, after 2 years, the last time Roger tried to overtake me was on Halloween night. Could have been 1974, maybe, or 73. I got separated from my sisters. I could feel him behind me. And I cut through this part of the alley, this way,
because my house would be on the left, and I was running because I knew exactly what was going to happen. And I didn't want it to happen anymore. So I ran down this alleyway. He was right behind me. And I jumped over this part, the shortest part of the fence, which used to be a chain link fence covered with ivy back then. And I ran into the house, my house. And that was the last time it ever happened again. Over here, I'll show you. This is where Roger used to live. The guy who sexually abused and raped me every week for 2 years of my life. That's where he lived. His best friend Michael, who was our, like I said, our babysitter's oldest brother, they lived on the end of 234, the end of Palo Alto Avenue. This is the house that Michael lived in. Roger's best friend. And I used to go every day because Michael's youngest sister was my babysitter. So I could not get away from it anytime I tried. So there you have it. My old house on 234 was an old green and white house. Huge backyard. It's been torn down, and this now replaces it. (234) Palo Alto Avenue. Significant address for me in my life. And a significant time in my life. Okay, now we're at Eagle Park. This place I used to come to almost every day in the summer. It had the pool right over there. It had a rec center, which I used to play pool all the time. It was kind of my refuge away from everything when I was growing up. Trying to forget all the terrible shit that was going on. It was also a place that held the bicentennial 4th of July celebration. On that day, I was about 11 years old. I was playing, of course, away from everybody. It was safe back then to just go off on your own. But I was walking up along this path, and I heard some people arguing. And I hid behind this tree. This tree right here. And as I got closer and looked around, I could see two men arguing down there. There was a white Cadillac parked right there. Two men arguing in the back of behind the Cadillac. Finally, one just had enough, pulled out a knife, and began stabbing the other guy and killed him. It's a lot to see when you're only 11 years old. I stood hidden behind the tree, hoping he wouldn't notice me. And the first opportunity I got, I ran back to where my mother and my sister was. I do remember Michelle saying that she had seen it too. it was a very rough way to grow up in this now yuppie town, which has Google and I don't know, it's all technology. It's a very yuppie town now. Back then it wasn't. But this is where I would go to get away and try and forget everything that was going on. I remember the swimming pool, which was my favorite place besides the rec hall, because I'd con guys out of their quarters. They come in, they try and play me, and I would beat them every time. But they still have the same swimming pool. I'm sure it's been rehabbed over the years. But I used to spend so much time here. I took diving classes. Used to love the high dive. Here it is. Yeah. There was this guy, big guy, and we nicknamed him Cocoa Berry. And whenever it was just time for certain age groups to be in, we would sit on the sideline as he climbed up the tall high dive, and he would do these bombs so that he could spray all of his kids just sitting on the sides. Those were the memories that I remember, the good ones.
All right, so that's the story of my life. And I can only honestly say that because what happened to me at that age really impacted my life to change the person that I was. I never realized that for 38 years of my life, I was living in silence with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And most people think that PTSD is a war veteran issue, and it's not. It's an issue for anyone who has experienced any traumatic events in their life. I didn't even know what it was back then. I just knew, when I began therapy 4.5 years ago, what it is and the symptoms. And I had them all: the nightmares, the night terrors, the constant on guard, for any noise or anything behind you. The flashbacks. So the way I went through and got through that was actually by focusing all my attention on being a good parent and being a good employee. What I was doing was ignoring everything else, finding other things to do that would put that out of my head. I was too busy dealing with raising my son and working and being a good employee that it didn't come into play at all until my son and I had a breakdown between our relationship, and it was extremely hard on me because we have such a close bond. He wouldn't talk to me for like 6-8 months. It hit me pretty hard, as some of you may know. And that was the trigger that sent me into a deep depression, very deep depression. Nobody saw it. Everybody always saw the happy, joking side of me. I never let anyone in. Even though I thought I was letting people in, they told me, you never did really let us in. And I didn't know that. It took me a long time to figure out what it was and what it took to let somebody in. So that depression, led me into a, just dark place where I felt life wasn't worth living anymore. So I decided that I wasn't going to live life anymore. What was worth living? I didn't have my son. Um, so I made a plan, wrote everything out, uh, wrote all my letters to people who were important in my life, um, to let them know how much I cared about them, and to just to let them know that I just could not go through this life like this anymore. Um, I remember one time driving out to my favorite spot near Fern Ridge. I had a gun with me, and that I was just going to end it then before I even had any letters or anything written. The gun didn't go off, malfunctioned. So when I came back and I made the date, and I knew what I was going to do. It was set for Labor Day of, I believe, 2010. 2010 or 2009, I can't remember. Anyway, the final letter I had to write was to my son. That was the hardest letter. I left that one for the last. When you make a plan, when somebody who's suicidal makes a plan and sets a date, there's a tremendous amount of relief that is just released, because you know that you're not going to be there. I mean, I had set the date. I never even unpacked my apartment because I knew that I was never going to be around to enjoy it or to, So I left everything in boxes, so that it would make it easier for people who had to come in and take care of that after I was gone. That last letter was too difficult. I started writing it, and I just had a breakdown. I could not stop crying. My friend called me, Shelley. It was hard. I couldn't keep it together. She came down. She took me to the hospital, and they admitted me into a psychiatric ward, the Johnson unit. It was a difficult 2.5 weeks that I was there. I was so deep in depression. I remember the psychiatrist telling me, people like you scare us. And I said, why is that? And he said, because nobody ever knows. And you made a plan, you set a date, and you were going to stick with it. He said, those are the type of people that actually follow through with what they were going to do. So I was in there for 2.5 weeks. They found me a therapist, a fantastic therapist, and that is key, to have an excellent therapist. I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for her. But I found myself at that point of depression about 2.5 months later, or actually 2 months later. I was going to therapy, but I just fell back into a depression and said, I don't want to do this anymore. I remember going out with Christy to the Corrales Farmers Market, came back home, and I kept saying in my head, because I was just full with stuff, and my head was just so full, and I just said, one more thing, and I'm done. One more thing happened. And I had prepared for that second time too. I took 60 200 milligram tablets of beta blockers and metoprolol, and 30 tranquilizers, and some muscle relaxants. And I laid down on my couch. I fell into a deep sleep, and then all of a sudden I knew I was leaving this earth, because everything just became so peaceful. The chaos in my head, all the noise, all the was just gone. And there was this overwhelming feeling of peacefulness. And I said, this is it. I said, this is where I want to be. I remember, it's just like they say, I remember a very white light. It was just bright, beautiful, and warming. I saw an indescript face. I couldn't tell if it was male or female. But it came out from that white brightness, and this was over a series of several minutes. And it looked at me, and all I could hear was, "Not yet," is what this face said. It said, "Not yet." And then all of a sudden, I came to, and the chaos all came back in my head, and all the noise. And I tell you, I was in the hospital, and I was pissed. I was pissed that I was alive. I was in ICU for a couple days. And I went back to the hospital, to the Johnson unit. I remember meeting with my therapist, and she just laid it on the line. She said, "Listen, I'm in this for the long haul. But if you're not going to put any effort into it, if you don't want to, then I can't help you." And I said, "You know what? I'm in this. Let's do this." So that began an ongoing treatment, intensive therapy treatment for, 3.5 years. I would always ask her, what's your average client, in here for? And she would just tell me, "You're my longest." 3.5 years. We connected, actually. She brought that out in a meeting. She says, "I've actually connected with you." She said, "It's very rare that I connect with patients, but I've connected with you, and I can feel your pain." And one day in particular in therapy, my therapist turned and looked at me and says, "You are not the norm." And she also mentioned she had never seen a more person wanting to be in control of everything in their life. A more controlled person. She's never met a more controlled person as me. Yeah, I can see that. And some people have told me that. But she said, "You are very different than most clients. In the fact that you have a child that you cared for deeply, that you nurtured, that you protected, that you provided a safe environment for, that truly loved their child." She told me that she sees so many clients, more clients, that do not turn out to be good mothers, that do not turn out to be compassionate people, as I am. And she says, "That's very different, because you could have easily gone the other way." And I looked at her, I said to her, "Why, I don't see any other way I could have turned out." I said, after what I'd been through, how could I treat a child so poorly, so badly? There's just no way. I said, I saw no other way to be, but be compassionate, be unconditional, and, protect my child. But I guess most people don't turn out that way, which is odd for me to understand. But I guess that disease or ailment or whatever you call it, PTSD, it is what it is, and it turns people into other things other than what I am. I'm grateful it didn't turn me the other way. Yeah. A friend of mine once told me that I made her a better therapist because nothing would work on me. None of the standard EMDR or other stuff that she had was therapies that she was throwing at this was helping. So she kept going to classes and seminars to learn new things and new treatments. And just for me, that's a great therapist. It's a very great therapist. I remember one of the toughest parts, there seem to be all these certain stages of therapy. And once I would clear one, certain things would go away. And then I would hurdle over another part of therapy, and another part of this PTSD would subside. PTSD will never go away. I do have the occasional flashbacks. They're not like they were before, and they don't affect me as much because I've learned, I've made peace with everything, and I've done everything I'm supposed to do. And so it will never go away forever, which is why I have a hard time with, this statute of limitation that's on, for rape and sexual assault and molestation and all that. There's a statute of limitations, but there's no statute of limitations for what we endure, the victim or the survivor, endure for the rest of our lives. A lot of people don't make it out. A lot of people take their lives, which is where I was at. I couldn't stand all of what was going on, the constant flashbacks, the nightmares, night terrors, I couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't keep it in anymore. And it was killing me. I think one of the hardest parts of my therapy was the final part, which was had to do with my mother. And my mother was told about what was going on when I was young by my older sister, who happened to catch it happening. She told my mother what she had seen. And my mother explained to me that she did call the cops, but I kept saying that nothing happened, and I was adamant that nothing happened, and that we were nagging her because Roger, little sister, was one of our closest friends, and we would want to go over there, and I don't know. Sometimes I don't know how I feel about that, but the final thing was to confront my mother. And first I asked her, questions, and it was 2 months later. I just asked her some questions about what she knew and everything. And then 2 months later, I really had to ask her the hard questions, and like, why didn't she do more to keep me safe? She always used to say that I was a very emotional child, and that she still stands by it now, that the reason I was so emotional and would just have these bouts of crying wasn't because of what was happening to me. It wasn't because I was being raped and abused every week. It was because I was a very emotional child. It had nothing to do with any of the rape or sexual abuse. She said, "You're a very emotional child. When you were 5 years old, you didn't speak for a whole year after your dad and I got divorced," which is true. I didn't. I took that divorce very hard, and I did not speak for a year from the age of 5 to 6, which is why I was also, did not start, school until 1 year later than most kids my age. But she would always attribute it to that. She couldn't handle my crying, There were certain things that she did. It was hard. My mom had a lot on her plate. She was dealing with a lot. And There were times I spent sleeping out in the garage because she couldn't handle my bouts of crying or my emotional state. And I remember my sister coming out and bringing me my dinner there. And for a kid who's 8 years old to have to sleep out in the garage. Let me tell you, it wasn't an attached garage. It was a detached garage. That was scary. There were other things that happened, you know, when she couldn't take my crying anymore. And my older sister witnessed some of those. And one of them, my older sister, pretty much saved my life one night. So I'm not going to go into details about it, but I knew from that whole experience with my mother that when I had a child, that I was going to raise him, giving him all the things that I didn't have that were the most important, and that was unconditional love, a nurturing environment, and a place he feels safe at, a home he feels safe in. And I know I gave those all to him because he told me that I did, and that he was very grateful, and that I was the best mother that any boy could ever hope for. He's the best son I could ever hope for. So Labor Day this year will mark 4 years since my first suicide attempt. I have come a long way, and there are people that I want to thank. And let's just start the list, because these are people who stood by me, who I knew were my true friends, who didn't judge me, who came and visited me and didn't make any judgments, who laughed with me. Because to get through this, you have to laugh. To get through the fact that you're sitting in the nut hut, the psychiatric ward, this upstanding, employee of the school district, or, the local sports organization, this person that gave 7 years of volunteering to sexual assault support services, but hid her own truth. These were the people that did not make judgments, did not. And one of them is Shelley. Shelley, you know who you are. Julie, for opening up her heart and her home to someone she did not know that well. But when she found out what I had gone through and what was happening, she realized that life can take somebody away from you so quickly, and nobody knows, because nobody stops to really get to know the people that are around them and what they may be going through. Rena, just coming to visit me and bringing me stuff from Sweet Life while I was in the nut hut. Ginger, my sidekick, my cycling buddy, who is always there and to kick me in the butt, get on that bike. April Holmes, come visit me in the hospital. Never made any judgments. Stacy and Bree, you know how much I love you guys. Thanks for being there. Jackie Kirkpatrick, you know who you are. You know how much I love you, and how much I've appreciated our friendship over the years. We have this interesting relationship. We don't see each other that much, but we're very, very bonded. And she's just always there, and I'm there for her, and she's just a light in my life. Irma used to be my boss over at Clear Lake Elementary School, and she was also who my first bike is named after. uh, Irma was there day or night. Anytime I'd call her, anytime I just needed to talk to somebody when things were going tough, she was there. And she took it upon herself. She knew, what depression was like, and she knew that when she needed to call my therapist and let her know, this is where Natalie's at. What should we do? So thank you, Irma. Sue, you know who you are. Also, I used to work with you at Clear Lake, just for helping move all my stuff out of my apartment when I was in the nut hut and in the hospital. My sisters, Michelle and Sonia. Thank you so much. I know we've had some shaky times, but in the end, you always supported me. And, yeah. We're much closer now than we were back then, but that's the way it usually works out. And you guys, I love you to death, and I'm glad we have each other, still despite how different we are. Nishay, for turning out to be an incredible friend that I knew she was, that I knew she could be. Not many people see that side of her, but I did, and I knew it existed, and that's why I have always kept her close. Biz, for your humor, for helping me laugh through all this, because if you don't have a sense of humor, you can't laugh about it. Yeah, sure, it is a serious thing, but you gotta know how to laugh, because you take it too seriously, it takes you down. So, thank you for that. Charlie, thank you. You came to the hospital too. No judgments ever. Took me out on a pass. Didn't ask me questions unless I wanted to talk about it. And I appreciate that. I so much appreciated that. So, thank you. Jennifer, my sweet Jennifer, for never giving up on me. Sorry if I was ever an asshole to you, but there's no buts. Sorry if I was ever an asshole to you. Thank you for sticking by me and taking the initiative to, call friend or contact friends, or, just to ask them for some guidance, and never giving up on me, saying I'm not going anywhere, I'm right here. Today we're very good friends, and I am so glad that I met you. Tajana for always keeping it real. I could talk to her, and I knew that she had been through a shit pile of things like I have. We joke that we're still here. It's not really a joke, because it is surprising that we are both still here. We both have crawled through a pile of shit and come out clean on the top. And whenever I need to talk, she grounds me. She throws in her humor there, because like I said, it's important to laugh. You gotta laugh. I've known her for, this is going to date us really bad. It's been about 40 years. No, I'm not 40. I'm sorry. It's been about 30 years. Yes, 30 years that we've known each other. And I would look at her and see what she went through, and I would think to myself, I can get through this. If Tajana could get through what she did, what happened with her, I can get through this. So I love her level head and her way she grounds me. So thank you, Tajana. EB, uh, I love you, EB. You know that. And we had a lot of shaky roads there. I know you made some difficult, hard decisions that were just um, for the better for me. I mean, I know you had to make some tough decisions while I was in the hospital, and they wouldn't let me leave. And I know it put some strain on our friendship then. And yeah, I did. Yeah, like you said, you hated me, and I'm like, yeah, I did at the time. But I look back at it now, and I said to myself, you did all that for me, and that was done out of love. And yeah, that's why I would have nobody else decide what would happen with me if I was ever, a situation where I was in the hospital dying, because I know you would carry out my wishes and honor that. You know how to make the tough decisions, and they were the right ones, and I love you for that. Um, Rosie, we met in the hospital in Nut Hut the second time. We have remained friends after we've gotten out. We've gotten better along the road together. And I know if anybody can understand what I feel at times, it's you. Because you went through the same thing I went through. So you know what I'm feeling. And you know what it's like. So when nobody else understands or knows, I know I can talk to you, because you know exactly what it is. That day I called you and you told me about your friend who you found that had killed himself with a shotgun. That day you saved me. You may not have realized it at the time, but you realized I was going through something. Just over the phone, you realized. And you told me, Nat, I can hear you. I know you're crying. If anything, I don't ever do this to Cameron. Don't ever do what my friend did, because it's not worth it. You telling me the story of what you had to do to clean up and that saved me that day. And I know I can just go over to your place and I can just chill and we can just be. So, thank you, and I love you so much, Rosie. Christy, Jack, and Nick, thanks for welcoming me into your family. Christy, you never ever, made this about you. All you ever did was say, what do you need? What can I do to help? Which is what people should be saying more often. I had so many people make this situation out to be about themselves. It was incredible. I heard some of the stories, people you thought were your friends. And they said, well, I'm still your friend. But they never showed up to visit you. They ended up taking some days off because it affected them. But not once did they come to see you. Christy, you never did that. You said, well, I'm here. What do you need? And you opened up your home to me. And you and I lived together for 2.5 years. And those were some of the funnest times. Instituted junk food Sundays. Had Nerf gun fights through the house with you guys, water fights. You know, you're you are a good friend, and I love you. Um, well, of course, I've got to thank Megan, my therapist. Um, she had a huge task in front of her. I don't think she really knew what she was in store for. Um, like one of my friends said, I made her a better therapist. She never gave up on me. She went through all these seminars to try and find a therapy that would work for me. She made herself available to me on the weekends for coffee or a movie. She would call me, gave me her personal cell. She would text me, make sure I'm doing okay on the weekends, after hours. Um, she took me personally to the hospital once. Um, she never gave up. And I happened to be her longest client. I was her longest client. 3.5 years of intensive therapy. But you have to have a good therapist. You have to get a good therapist that you can connect with. Or else, if you don't, you're just sitting there talking in circles and nothing ever gets resolved, nothing ever gets accomplished. Megan, you are incredible. And I thank you for not, I mean, you're not the person that would kick somebody in the ass, but you were there, you were there ready to, if I needed to. Um, but you asked the hard questions. You did whatever you needed to do. Sometimes it pissed me off, yeah. You did yeah. Looking like the cops coming down your work on a suicide call. um, but you did what you had to do. And you know what? I don't think I could have gotten through it without you. I really don't. Could never have gotten through it. So I want to thank you for all your hard work. All those years of believing that I could get to this point. And we were going to do anything we could to get me to this point. So, thank you. And last but never least, Cameron. I know this devastated you the first time. And you couldn't understand it. Because Mom was always strong. Mom was always there solving the problems of other people's problems too, But I know it shocked you in the beginning, and you didn't know how to feel. Or were you crying when you were sitting there with me, saying that you just never saw this coming? Saying that you're the strongest person I know, Mom. I still am. But in the right way now. We resolved our problems, and I think we've gotten so much closer now after all of this. You brighten my day just when you call me to say that I love you. To say, hi Mom, I was just checking in with you. Want to see how you're doing? I love you. You never shy away from giving me a big hug, or me giving you a big hug and kiss, in public in front of your coworkers. You're the light of my life, and you are my monument. And I am so proud to have you as my son. And I love you so much. So much. So, thank you for always being there and laughing with me too. I love you, Cam. All right. I think that just about covers this. It's a long video. Hope you watch it. But I'd probably share it with you and let you know the person I am. So, if you're ever going through something like this, don't keep quiet. Don't let it get to the point that I let it get to. You know? Do something about it. If it's even just to text or call me, or email me, or message me. Don't ever let things get to the point I let them get to. Because by miracle, God, I came back. I know some will find that hard. You said God, a higher being, but by some miracle, I did make it back. My doctor said I should have been dead. Those 200 milligram tabs of metoprolol should have stopped my heart, and they did for a little bit. But yeah, I'm still here, and I never thought life could be any better than what I knew it was for all those years, and it is. I am so happy now, and I just know things will just continue to get better and better. So, all right, so that's it. Thanks, guys. Oh, a PS moment. I don't know how I could have ever forgotten this, because you know, guys, I never let you guys forget how important it is to me. But cycling, it's not a person to thank, it's a thing to thank. Because cycling, it was part of my therapy. When I would stray off, I'd be feeling those real lows. I used to always go out and do something that was very self-destructive, not good. And cycling is actually what I got addicted to when I was just rehabbing my knee from a total knee replacement. And I realized I had a passion for it, and then I incorporated it into this whole healing process for me. And it is what I use to get me through tough times, because, you know, they're going to be tough days. And we all have our ways of getting through them. And for me, cycling is that. And I'm just so lucky that it is a passion that I have, because I look forward to it. But it is a form of therapy for me. And that's why it was so devastating when my bike got stolen. So hopefully I'll have a new one by June 1st. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that, because that's a big part of my life. All right. Talk to you guys later.